Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today as I continue our weekly discussions based on the book, The Integral Human Beings. This book, which is part of the psychological series or psychological collection, is a 16 book uh, groupings of a series, a 16 book collection, right? That was written by spiritual author Joanna de Angelis in close collaboration with Divaldo Pereira Franco. I like to bring up every time we meet that the main value of us studying these books, right? We started earlier with other books, and we are on book number 2 now. But Joanna de Angelis, she is responsible for creating this bridge between spiritism and depth psychology. So discussing some issues as well as therapies that she offers in her book. Usually, I like to also highlight that each chapter is just 2 to 3 pages, and they're quite dense. So my proposal here is to break down, dissect as I see, and perhaps in doing that, um, make you curious to read, or maybe even ready to understand better, or to share your thoughts about the content. If we consider how vulnerable all of us are in this moment, right? Humanity as a whole is going through so much pain, so much suffering. And this book is indeed a gift to all of us because it talks about not just the symptom of the pain, but those root causes, those solutions, and perhaps some stabilizing opportunities for all of us. The focus is to just bring on a week by week cadence the each chapter so that we can better understand. But let's get going. Um, the content of the book, before I get started proper, is 40 chapters into, let me go back here, my apologies, but 40 chapters, and they're divided in those 9 parts. So today we are right in the middle of the fifth section of the book with chapter 19, which is neurotic behavior. So, yes, right. But those chapters really go all the way from discussion on the aspect of routine in our mental emotional health, loneliness, to different types of mental illnesses, proper, even death, she talks about. So let us explore each theme together and look at it from the lens that Joanna de Angelis brought to us, which is spiritism and depth psychology. So I'm moving on now back to where I was the other slides, but I'm going to talk a little bit about neurotic behaviors. And we can start by reading Joanna de Angelis' comment on what they are. And she starts like this: psychogenic factors are products of the deep unconscious that manifest as neurotic behavior. And I go, say what, Joanna? What do you mean by that? And if we break down just the first 2 words, right? Psychogenic pain is the term for the pain that are primarily caused by psychological factors, not physiological. So the psychogenic factors are really referencing the pain caused by those factors. What are those? Depression, anxiety, right? And the pain, um, as and you can read this in many psychological sites that they talk about the psychogenic pain is not really caused by a physical pathology, right? Yet it is very real type and chronic pain. So psychological factors may cause not only physical pain, but as I mentioned, anxiety disorders, bipolar disorder, depression, stress. So, just like pain caused by any physical stimulus, psychogenic pain can be that acute or that chronic. And those symptoms are involuntary. You don't wake up and say, "Hey, today I want to go and be depressed." And I know I'm being light about a very difficult subject for so many of our family members, ourselves sometimes, or those dear to us. But we don't. It's completely involuntary, and this is very interesting to me, and I hope to you as well. They're usually protective against some overwhelming stressor that we're going through. Okay, so break down again. Let's go back. Those psychogenic pains are, simply put, those pains that are caused by those factors such as depression, anxiety. It can include bipolar disorder and other types of stressors. They are not physical, right? They're not prompted by a physical condition, but they're many times experienced physically, and they are chronic, just like if you were to hurt your arm or your legs, for example. But we do this, our body, our psyche does that to protect us against something else outside. So by understanding, right, that these psychogenic symptoms or factors, right, are here involuntarily being to protect us. We need to see that they result from our deep unconscious. What is Joanna referencing to us again is that she's mentioned they are in our deep unconscious, which really means they are in our deep past, so deeply repressed, the causes for that, right? That in is most likely a remote past, as in a past life, a past incarnation. And specifically, she says that these factors are, in a way, deeply seated in the conduct of anyone, right, as a result of a loss of inner harmony. So it is difficult to hear this, but in this paradigm here, that it's there to help us, to protect us, and most of us are just like, what I'm suffering, but the suffering is to actually protect me from something larger, right? So from that perspective, it is hard to understand, it is difficult to be accepted, and our own neurotic behaviors are just a symptom, right? An evidence of the mechanism that are here in each one of us to promote what I call a long term healing. Not today. Today, you're going through a lot of pain, but it's actually a mechanism to protect us future states. So think about it. Our neurotic behaviors can be seen as emotional, right? uh, or a actual physical behavior reaction to something else, and they can seen as conflicts of our own consciousness. And what we mean by that is those conflicts in our consciousness may be dissociations, fragmentation of our personality, hallucinations, neurosis, and psychosis. When we put it all together on what we mean by all of those behaviors, we can see that all of it may lead to a disintegration of our own individuality. Why do I say this? Because it's really important for us to go back to the book, right? The book is the integral human being, and Joanna de Angelis is talking about all those things that are in the way, they're roadblocks to us being that integrated, individuated uh, uh, person, human being, right? And those neuroses, they're here to protect us, are actually leading us to the disintegration of our own individuality. So when we stop to think about, to reflect upon these few not chapters, this few paragraphs in this chapter, we see that Joanna keeps pushing us to the conclusion that in the end, all of us, whatever we're going through, we are reacting from the factors that are against our aspiration that all of us have, which is we want to be free. And the sense of freedom that Joanna talks about is a sense of freedom of any type of embarrassment. This is a ego response, right? When we are threatened, our ego is threatened, so we want to be free from it, and we have mechanism to react upon it, and also any type of emotional or physical confinement, anything that will just hold on to us, will capture us and not allow us to grow, to be free. So some of the points that Joanna brings to us is that we do suffer, and we do suffer from what? Well, just life. We have so many pressures. We have so many responsibilities. We have so many desires, right? So those pressures will give us a sense of stress, and our mechanism of defense against those are, if we see that it's threatening our sense of freedom, it may be avoidance, right? Aggression, even um, from an aggression behavior, violence, or on the other spectrum, depression, or even that just sense of pessimism, right? Life is here given to us, and I just my defense mechanism may be not defense. My response mechanism is just no, no, this is never going to work. So I just pause here to ask you and me to just reflect. How is my life? What are the stressors coming at me? What are the things that is pushing me to be off kilter? Is this my everyday state? Am I already at that point that I've been suffering from those psychogenic factors that are here to protect me, right? What is it? Are we? What does our lives look like on a daily basis, right? Are we exposed to a number of external stimuli that will influence us positively or negatively? And we see that those stimuli through just this current life, today, tomorrow, yesterday, right? How do they influence me? How do they influence my family life, my work life, my sense, my community, and society at large? So when I think about that, the thought that comes to my mind is, for example, our lives today. We're talking about 2024, right? Our lives today is different from even 3 years ago, pre-pandemic, or um, from, let's say, 70 years ago, if we're thinking in terms of post World War II world. So things change, and it's up to us to understand how do I react internally, and boom, 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 how do I influence as well as my family life, my work life, and my society at large. And in so many, ideally speaking, right, we would look for positive stimuli, a life that is fulfilled, a life that gives me opportunities to grow, to be challenged, to grow emotionally, to grow intellectually. And when we have that, and we think about those things, that when you're a new mother, that's what you want for your child, right? To have all that environment to stimulate the child to grow and to be happy and to be encouraged to want to do things. If we flip the coin, right, when we are in an environment that we just receive negative stimuli, what will we attain to be, or what is the direction for our feelings and our psychological well-being? Well, it's unhappiness at a minimum, but also I see no sense of motivation that leads maybe to sadness, at a pathological aspect, to depression, chronic depression, so on and so forth. Joanna in this chapter is inviting us to overcome those external forms of negative influence to hit us, to hurt us, to make us that live lives of unhappiness and lack of motivation, so on and so forth. Right? She urges us to fight, to overcome, and she specifically says, because when we don't, one of the traps of I'm not going to overcome, I'm not going to fight it, I can fall into the traps of, oh, I want to get anything that will get me out of this unhappiness, fleeting pleasures that can be addictive behaviors, that can be just uh, a sense of a party, superficial emotions, because I don't need to go down deep into my pain. Also, she says we can fall into the trap of the desire to own things, because those things may help me define a modicum of power, of joy that I don't really feel, but will be an externalization of those effects. Or when we can't, right? We cannot go for fleeting pleasures, a jolt of adrenaline, or even the external apparatus of owning things. Then we can also fall prey to just a sense of, I'm so depressed. I have no urge to do anything, and I feel vulnerable, and I actually feel quite fragmented psychologically speaking, right? So it's from that sense that she talks about, let us look at our feelings, and let's see if these feelings, regardless of the life that we give, is really an externalization of our own unhappiness, our lack of gratitude, or our lack of the ability to have a sense of fulfillment, or her favorite word, plenitude, right? The sense of I'm whole, I am fulfilled. But if we keep going, because this is an interesting part of the chapter for me, is the now when we talk about neurosis and the causes of neurosis, or neurotic behaviors, now we are going to psychological health. Right? She introduces the idea, Joanna de Angelis, of psychological health by bringing us the story of an antithetical framework for psychological health. Oh my goodness, Joanna, you just keep ping ponging with ideas in my brain. But she says, let's reflect upon the myth of Midas. And I hope you remember, right? The story of King Midas and his golden touch. So it is a myth about, basically, in so many words, the tragedy of greed. So basically, it tells us what happens when our true happiness that we already have is not recognized by us. Hence, remember, I am unhappy, I am ungrateful, I am not fulfilled because the happiness that is right here with me is camouflaged by other things that are more glitzier or shinier to us. So, who was King Midas? Midas was a man who wished. This is his wish, and many say his curse as well. He wished that everything he touched would turn into gold. And it's so funny in my experience. This is we're talking about professionally experience. We've had some great, amazing leaders, organization leaders that we say, "Oh, look at this person. He or she has that Midas touch," meaning that whatever failing or okay, mediocre results, driving results and value of an organization, this person comes in and poof, does the Midas touch, and all of a sudden we think it becomes something better. Well, Midas wished for it, he got it, but he never thought about the consequences of actually everything that he touched becoming gold. And he then, when he saw the consequences, of course, he realized that it was not a blessing whatsoever. It was actually a curse. And this myth of Midas and this story, right? It's a myth. The story about greed really is an invitation for all of us to think about the consequences that may lead us to become slaves of our own desires, right? So again, the phrase "the Midas touch" comes from this myth, and it's usually used for somebody who is very lucky, has good fortune, and we're here to say, is it? Read the entire myth instead of assuming an abbreviated way to understand the story. King Midas is that symbol of greed that causes both happiness, and I say quote unquote happiness because it's really temporary, right? You get like, oh, I got gold and I'm rich, I'm wealthy. But it's soon to be seen that this is really a source of our own disgrace, of loneliness and starvation, so on and so forth. So Joanna says that Midas, the myth of Midas, is an amazing story for us to think of the neurotic behavior of, and that's her, she coined this term, right? The owned owner individuals. You are you are able to possess, but you're enslaved by that ability to possess. And I think, my goodness, isn't that where we all are right now, right? So Joanna uses this myth to recommend full awareness of our own flaws. This is that consumerism or ownership is one of them, but to look at our flaws and to welcome this opportunity as we look into ourselves to alter our own comprehension, to be able to redirect our efforts, our desires, even toward not ownership as one example, but toward balance, toward what are our values. But I have to tell you, this is not easy at all. We all, and we say we, humanity as a whole, we all struggle, and we must fight. And this is a relentless fight to not be imprisoned, enslaved by our own desires. And I'm going to quote here her words because, and it's in the slide here, but I don't know if you can read it if you are in a mobile device. Joanna says the psychological health comes from self awareness, inner freedom, and an accurate perspective that individuals must maintain towards life and their own ethical, emotional, and human needs. Unfortunately, right? We're part of a society that values and actually drives us, pushes us into creating new desires, new needs that we didn't even know we had it, because it's all feeding the machine that is consumerism. And our own neurotic behaviors are just a response mechanism, right? A mechanism that is defending us from our own, oh, lack of balance, our maladjustments to what society is asking of us, our own phobias, perhaps, and they they may really drive um, pathological states. And it's just really important for us to observe. It is a mechanism to protect us, but in the mechanism to protect us, we end up falling prey to a pathological state as we are just reacting, right? And Joanna concludes here by saying, let's be real. She didn't say that. That's me. Let's be real, and let's really face the fact that most of us are afraid to be our authentic selves. So that's number one. And because of that, we become, and that's her coin term, I love it though, mirror beings, right? We just become individuals that keep reflecting others. But by reflecting others, we're adopting their own phobias, their own anxieties, their own issues, and because of it, we create walls that are not only our walls, but we adopt their walls, and we are unable to be open, to be free, to be accepting. And I want to say here, and this is my own very, very personal observations. I I was born and lived my childhood and young adulthood in a country where trust is a very um, difficult to find aspect of the society, right? And because of it, most individuals are uh, they have suspicion. So, for example, after leaving the country and going back about 10 years later, and it was so funny because I was free. I was living a new paradigm, a new life that was so much freer. I didn't have to keep looking. I didn't have to think about, oh, for example, not the case, but if I have my um, say my mobile device with me, that somebody is going to steal it. No, I got there and I was just at a train station looking for the map to localize myself, and the person who's supposed to meet with me, she goes, Oh my goodness. You scream being a tourist. Huh? Yeah, you have no sense of self awareness in your spatial and how people can hurt you. Well, she says, be aware, right? And this is, of course, a very physical term. But Joanna says, be aware of those walls and self defenses, right, that we put us, because while opening up leads us potentially to being vulnerable, to be hurt, it also frees us to be so much more, to experience life so much better. So, and so this is just a point that I wanted to bring to us here, because going back after 10 years and coming back again to where I live now, I could see how suffocating is to live a life that you have to be so afraid of being hurt. She also brought the third component, and that's the last part before we go into our conclusion here. She goes to the third component. So we're afraid of being ourselves, authentic selves. And because of that, number two, we start reflecting other people. And doing this, we reflect their own phobias, building our walls and their walls, right? Trying to protect us instead of being free. And number three, we embrace the current society that is formed by the notion of competition, right? That notion of this society is one that is really neuroticizing, and it reflects a society that is born out of a need to produce, right? And there are many consequences of that. We don't have time to go through this, but real quickly we can think in terms of the low value that society, and we're talking about Western society mostly, puts into their children and their elderly, because they don't produce, they need to be taken care, they are, financially speaking, they're drained to society. Wow, right? But it's the truth here. But because that society of production, right, it also has a flip side, which is a society of consuming that is produced. And finally, is in this spirit of competition, there is this need that become a desire that becomes a need to procure for wealth. Remember Midas, King Midas, and the Midas touch, right? But let's move on to something that I hope is interesting to you, because she moves on from the idea of the spirit of competition to, at the very closure of her chapter today, which is the opposite, and that is collaboration, right? Collaboration versus competition. And one way for all of us to think about this notion of collaboration is through leadership styles. And one of them that I would like to bring here, and I know you're reading a slide that says servant leadership, and I'm not going to talk about it yet, but one of them is simply an umbrella term for different type of leadership styles, which is called participative leadership. It's also known as, for example, democratic leadership. Simply put, it is a style where leaders involve everyone around them, specifically their members of whatever team, organization, etc., in decisions. And those leaders, they value the inputs, they encourage, and the word here that I want to emphasize is encourage. They encourage inputs, they encourage openness, they encourage communication. And this leadership style fosters engagement, collaboration, and creativity. So you can start to see that is a much freer type of organization. Why am I saying that? Well, Joanna, in talking about neurotic behaviors and talking about psychological health, she screams, those are my term, right? She screams in her book, like, our society needs solidarity, it needs peace, and it needs us to focus on humanizing ourselves, humanizing our society. And we do this when we are able to transform ourselves individually and all of us into self actualized individuals. Yes. So before we close, let's just think about what we mean by that. The term self-actualization can be really seen well when we talk about the Maslow pyramid of or the Maslow hierarchy of needs, which was brought to us this thinking in the mid 50s, right? And Abraham Harold Maslow, who is this American psychologist, he was the one who, and hence his name, created this idea of a hierarchy of needs, which is a theory of how we can become psychologically healthy, and it's all predicated on the fulfillment of our innate human needs. And it's a pyramid, right? So there is certain levels that goes higher and higher, and the top level is the self actualization that Joanna speaks about. So basically, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is this theory in psychology that is motivational in its base, in its foundation, and it has 5 tiers, right? And they go from physiological, the very bottom, and the physiological needs are, oh, breathing, the need to eat, for water, shelter, clothing, sleep, right? And then the next level, once you attain all of those physiological needs, now you go into safety and security, which is maybe access to health, access to unemployment, right? A sense of security, maybe a sense, and this is, I say maybe, but it's really from when you study Maslow hierarchy, it's listed there, but a sense of owning of your own property, your house, for example, to having a family and have your own social sense of self, right? The third, right in the middle, is the level of love and belonging, and I love it because it is the goal that we all as human beings should have, of having friendships, having family and family members close to you, and that sense of intimacy and connection. Fourth level is self esteem, which is basically the level that talks about our ability to have self confidence, right? Achievement, a sense of respect of ourselves and others, and the need to be unique. I love that, right? So it's your self esteem. But it culminates, because it goes back to what Joanna said, to self actualization. And self actualization is really all about morality, creativity, spontaneity, acceptance, having purpose and experience that, have a sense of meaning, and really understand your inner potential. And I love it. I love that. But right, if you think about, with when we look into this pyramid, we understand that lower level, the basic needs, right? Food, water, blah, 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 even the safety needs, they must be met before you can actually go toward that sense of fulfillment. We do also note that, few people, very few people, are known to have reached the level of self-actualization. So going back to Joanna's words, right? She really talks about the idea that we all need to be able to have a sense of solidarity, to be peaceful, to humanize the human race, which is an amazing thought, by transforming ourselves into self actualized individuals. So one thing predicates the other, and the one thing reflects in the first. So it's important that to think about, even if we're not there yet, right? We know it's very few people that can do it, but even if we're not there yet, we can all have moments that we feel, yes, I am fulfilled. I reached the top of the mountain. And and Joanna says, right, if if we go back to the notion of participant leadership, right? We go back to what Joanna proposes here, which is we talked about we are mostly in a competitive spirit of competition, that we should foster the spirit of collaboration. And she says, and I she challenges us to actually be a third one, a much deeper level, which is a very, very, very rare behavior indeed. And this is Joanna's terms, I am sure. She calls us to become human bridges. What? Human bridge. It is a notion that if we say to ourselves that we want to be a human bridge, that means that I will find opportunities where there are gaps, and I'm going to bridge them, because I'm going to assist those that need, because of gap, they need my assistance. I'm going to facilitate, I'm going to aid in whatever format. But back to what I said before about the participative leadership, right? We can see that leaders can also be human bridges, right? And think about it. Those, all of us individuals who strive to be those human bridges, they will be there. And they even do this by, say, right, the finding and addressing the gaps that exist in two different extremities, so that not just financial, physical gaps, right, but really existential chasms that exist between a person that is so depressed, that is suffering or contemplating suicide ideation, to that person that we all should be, which is the self-actualized individual. Do you see that? So if we go back to the participative leaders, we we talked about it already, but they include a person that values the others, their skills, their thoughts, their talents. They're open minded, they accept others' thoughts and ideas. They are great at providing a space for sharing, whatever the sharing may be. And they're there to listen, to see, to open the eyes to see the other. A servant leader, as you can see there, and you see my little drawing of a human bridge. That's what I try to be, to do. I hope it makes sense to you. But that servant leader goes even further in the sense that his or her leadership style is based on the idea that leaders prioritize serving the greater good. I'm going to repeat. They prioritize serving the greater good. And so anyone who says, I'm a leader, because we all are, I'm a leader, and my style is a servant leadership style. I serve those uh, that are around me and my organization first. I don't prioritize my own agenda, my own objectives. So if you think in terms of not organizationally speaking, but yourself and your family, right? How does it look different if you are a leader in a family that prioritizes uh, your health? I don't know if this is bad, a good example, but prioritizes his or her own everything versus the children, the the parents, the all of those around. And it's very interesting because when we start to look at the us versus the I, it shifts dramatically our energy output. And back to servant leadership, those who are that subscribe to this leadership style, they don't prioritize. They don't put their own needs first. And when you are part of that organization, either being a family or organization, then you feel heard, you feel seen, you feel that you matter, and you start to be encouraged, and that's the external stimuli that we need to become healthy and fulfilled. So when we all decide to become that human bridge, right, we will provide all of that to those around you. But with that, I want to say thank you. Thank you so much for being here. As we wrap up our discussion, I just invite you to join me next time in my next discussion of the next chapter, which will be modern diseases. And again, it's all part of that group of chapters that talk about health, disease, mental health, etc., etc. But with that, I want to say thank you. Thank you for your time, and I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.